let's go back to, we want to talk about Henry Kissinger, but also I introduced the idea about George Bush. 3, 2, 1. Now, so George Bush, I mean, all these people rise up to the ranks, the same club. Right. No wonder, you know, I saw a little TV clip one time where a reporter was asking George Bush and others about the Order of the Skull and Bones. All these guys were shocked that somebody even mentioned the term, and they just would not discuss it at all.
Right.
And the reporter said, I understand that as part of the oath you don't discuss it. And George just flat out said, it's just not to be discussed. And that was the end of the subject. Now, that's because, I mean, if this really got out, that these guys are all inducted because they've got some kind of homosexual thing on them.
Indoctrination. I mean, or induction. They have to do that.
Yeah.
They do that.
Yeah.
Even in a coffin. And it's even now coming into the military totally. The chiefs do that. They put them in the coffin. They do the bowling ball trick.
Okay, you're going to explain this. What happens when you get in the coffin? Why do you get in a coffin?
Oh, they get, when you get your eagles, that's a German thing.
Okay.
You know, it's what the German High Command did, and most of them, you know, had the boyfriends and stuff, the Krupps and all of that. It is a German thing that they say goes back to Greece, and it's all the male Marine-looking men that they do it with. See? So now the chiefs have to do that. What they do is they get, George said it's like a zoo. They get everybody really drunk, and they sometimes call it dining in. Shellback is another time that they do it. Not everybody does it, but the ones who do it, if they're young, they get right up to the top. It's a...
okay, well, what actually do they do? They've got a coffin, they get inside this...
Anal sex. Oh, that. They put them in the coffin and they do things.
Okay, they perform things on each other?
Yeah, while they're all around there going drunk. And
I see. So there's a guy in the coffin.
Yeah, and he's the one who
is the recipient of all the acts.
Right, right.
Yeah. Probably safe to conclude these are oral sex acts on this guy or something like that. Okay.
Yeah, oral and anal, whatever.
Yeah.
But
what's the significance of the coffin?
I don't know.
It's the mystique about the skull and bones
what's
and death.
What's interesting is now the young SEALs, Delta Force, the ones who go from Army to BUDS, the BUDS training SEALs,
BUDS
is the emerging SEAL group.
Oh, I see. They're budding SEALs.
Budding SEALs.
I see.
And they have to break into houses. Their training exercise is to break into civilians' houses.
For practice? For
practice. They broke into my house. When George and I were first married, I had many underwear. You know, this is terrible to say, but lingerie. I had lots of, you know, I didn't buy much, but it all disappeared. And then when the psyching was beginning, I had white blouses, but they would all have black dots on them. I'd say, George, here's another blouse with a black dot.
It was just a little message?
This was somebody's message, you know. Or I would, after George left, it was batteries in a drawer. You know, you can't tell the police I opened up a drawer where I had 6 batteries and now I've got 50 batteries. They're going to say, well, of course you're crazy, you know. And I started my little sob with a screwdriver. And, you know, I was always looking around for screwdrivers. Well, one day I come home and there are about 12 screwdrivers on the table, you know, neatly placed. Well, you can't call the police and say, I've got 12 screwdrivers, you know. You can't tell people that you've got black dots on all your white blouses. You know, your shoes are disappearing. And then, this is really, I called the police the first break-in, which was the night of March the 4th, the night before I went to see General Joy at the Marriott.
Yeah.
Well, I had already called the police when I was battered because I was just bruises. I made O.J.'s wife look like Marilyn Monroe. I mean, you talk about. And I was doing this because I thought it would help him, you know, have 45s put to my head. And he's laughing. He'd strangled me and put his finger on my jugular vein. And he'd just say, now don't you dare move. You know, I mean, or I'd be lying in bed and he'd do a jap where he'd just push me off the bed. You can't believe what horror I went through to try and get this man to understand what Christ's love is about. You know, people say, oh, well, you should have left. Well, I took my marriage vows seriously. I knew he was injured psychologically by the war, by whatever he was made to do. So, I mean, I'm fine. I just sacrificed a lot. I was in a big wrestling match with a crazy guy, you know. But I still love the little boy within. He's very troubled. But anyway, I called the police after a number of little break-ins. And guess what? The policeman they sent was a little short guy with a short haircut whose name was Shorty Satterwhite.
Okay.
And Shorty Satterwhite was saying, oh, now, Miss Griggs, now you're just making this up. Now, you know, Miss Griggs, this is just, you're just traumatized, your husband's gone, blah, blah, blah. I found out he was a 20-year Marine.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And not only that, but there's another part of his life. But that's okay. I mean, he's a nice guy. But he was a Marine.
And he takes orders.
Of course he does. He's still reserve. So I think, okay, I'll call the FBI. You know, I'll let them know what's going on. I heard about the FISA court and that they, you know, because I'm talking about William Colby, maybe they think I'm a threat because I know all these international people. So I'm just going to call them and tell them what's going on. So I called Torrance, who's the head of the FBI, and he's too busy, you know, too busy. So he sends this guy, Dan McNally, out. And Dan McNally is a very nice guy, and he has this girl interview me, and I type out something about George's history and what I know. Guess who else is a 20-year Marine? Dan McNally.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happens that Dan McNally's best friend, and he's not married either, but that's all right, his best friend, who is from North Carolina and never married, is a best friend of Fred Hentz, who's the one who took me to this place, Mahi Maz, where I had the 2 death threats, who was graduated from college in flat 59. He was intelligence. His father was a German high, part of the Kaiser's elite group.
Mm-hmm.
He was NATO colonel, which I thought was pretty neat, and that's why they knew the profile. Kay likes NATO people because she's going to learn a little bit about another culture, you know. And I'm not saying that because his family were high command, but he was also an existentialist. And
okay, and again, for our viewers that may not know the term existentialist, you mean?
An existentialist, according to my husband, which he is one, Fred Hentz, all of these people are existentialists. They believe in doing whatever it takes. It doesn't matter what the law says.
Mm-hmm.
They will do anything necessary to get what they want politically.
Okay.
And economically and whatever. In other words, killing a leader, killing 5 people, killing 20 people, according to George, is a lot better than war. This is the way they rationalize it. You didn't used to kill women and children in war when the British Army, when they were pure kind of, you didn't go out and kill. I think Dresden, they did do some of that. But that was That was Walt Whitman Rostow and his crowd. And he's a very dangerous man, because Walt Whitman Rostow is a communist.
Okay, and in what capacity is he?
Oh, he was one of the wise men in Kennedy's administration. I think he was probably responsible for the movement that got Kennedy murdered. I believe it was an Israeli group which did it with some of these rogues.
Okay, now when you mentioned wise men, is this an insider term?
Wise men, yeah. Kennedy's wise men were guys like, you know, the Harvard crowd. And he was trying to bring them in to change things around a lot.
Uh-huh.
Walt Whitman Rostow was the one who got us into the Vietnam War because he wanted to sell the weapons and stuff. He and Victor Krulak, who is the present commandant's father, Krulak was his lackey. Walt Whitman Rostow's lackey. Walt Whitman Rostow went with Taylor, General Taylor, and wrote the report that got us into the Vietnam War. And all the time that the Pentagon was saying, no, 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 he was a cheerleader for the weapons sales. He and Henry Kissinger, Heinz. He and Henry. Walt Whitman Rostow, Eugene Debs Rostow, these were communists, named for communists. Eugene Debs Rostow and it's either his son or his other brother, runs the big Boston mob, the port there. His name is Nicholas Rostow, with the Weld, you know, with William Weld. They've done all that drug business in Mexico for years. They had that Russian, you know, the one who was murdered by the assassin, Ramon. You know, he was a competitor, Stalin's competitor, and he escaped. Very famous. Tolstoy.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Tolstoy became a Christian at the end, and you can't become a Christian. That's a death warrant. So they killed Tolstoy because he was becoming too, I think, now I don't know the whole story. There's probably a lot more to it, and I just, maybe I see completely the wrong picture there. But Tolstoy was murdered by the same Parisian, Spanish, Czechoslovakian, Georgian, Russian group,
Okay.
which are all part of the former Abwehr.
All right.
We've got to stop. Tolstoy is not the correct name. I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of it. Tolstoy is a writer.
A what?
He's a writer. He's a Russian writer. But the guy you're thinking of was murdered in Mexico.
Yeah.
It's not Tolstoy.
Okay. What was his name?
Nice little Jewish boy.
Good. It's a good point to bring this up, because if we can correct that name, and don't go that wide. When I'm talking about going wide, I'm not talking about going anywhere near that wide, because we get all this junk over here we don't want in the picture.
Are you sure it
That
wasn't
is
Tolstoy? I think
plenty
it
for-
was.
He's a writer.
That's just plain for me.
I know he's a writer.
Sorry about that.
That's
I
okay.
know.
This
That's
guy
okay.
was
You're learning.
the right-hand man of Lenin, and he defected and went to Mexico.
Right.
Went to Mexico and murdered him.
I think it was Tolstoy.
It could be two Tolstoys.
No,
Tolstoys.
Tolstoy is a very famous author.
You're not thinking of Trotsky.
Oh, yes, you're right. A. Oh, got it. Let's correct that. Oh, thank you. Bravo.
We're getting close.
Bravo.
You were doing
Close.
well, and I thought we can't use this because it's the wrong name, and it's going to destroy
Good,
the whole story.
good.
And I'm
You're
sorry
good,
about
Okay.
that.
good.
All right. Well, let's back up. Okay. We have 5 minutes to go. Okay. We can easily do that. That is on this tape.
I'll tell you what,
We have more time than this, but on this tape.
Next tape, and in the next 5 minutes, tell us what Max Sog means, because you mentioned it earlier.
Okay.
But I still don't know what it means.
But let's get Trotsky in this piece right now while we're thinking about this. Okay. So let's pick this up with. You were saying about We were talking about the Wiseman. We were talking about the Rostos and
William Weld in Mexico and the involvement of the Mexican government. And it's not Tolstoy, it's Trotsky.
Okay, hold on a second. Won't even necessarily mention that because that will be completely clipped and edited. So just go ahead and tell the whole story, but use the name Trotsky.
All right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
go ahead. Here we go.
This group, which was run out of Paris, is still being run out of Paris, this revolutionary terrorist group, which is controlling these Marines and Army Steiner's group. They all operate together. The man who started all of this program during Vietnam used communists who were in the Spanish communist movement. They actually promoted communists in the OSS, which was started by this William, Donovan.
Okay.
So they were promoting and using communists who were actually wanting to get rid of our form of government as a stepping stone to world domination. So this group now in the Army and in the Marine Corps has communists at the very top who are really, existentialist, which means they don't believe in God, they don't believe in Christ, they live for the moment, they believe in sort of one world which has no religions in it.
Right.
They're the ones who put Napoleon in power, they're the ones who put Oliver Cromwell in power, they're the ones probably who actually were behind the Roman Empire and maybe the Egyptian Empire. They put puppet people in power and they actually run it from behind the scenes. Now, Trotsky, as I understand it, was escaped from Russia. He had become a Christian, I understand, and was working with agents in the United States, Israel, and he was considered a threat. So he had to be silenced, killed. There's an excellent book which I have called The Mind of an Assassin, which is about the background of Trotsky's assassin, a young man named Ramon, who was trained, he was Soviet paid, I think he had experience in Spain. They organized it in Paris, I believe. And of course, up to the present time, there have been assassins operating out of Rome, Milan in particular, Naples, and Paris. And these are all anarchists, all mob related. They use mob funding. And of course, drug money to pay for the weapons, which are brand new weapons. The Bosnia Bazaar, this is the reason we had the war in Bosnia. The war in Bosnia is simply a stage to train assassins, to be a market for brand new weapons, to be a marketplace so that the drug money can be used. And the Army runs the whole show. It's totally run by the Army. The CIA is a bogus thing. It's training and doctrine command. It's NATO. It's SHAPE. Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, started by Eisenhower. It's a totally independent corporation. Its main function is to sell weapons and launder money.
You're talking about CIA?
No,
No,
talking
no.
about SHAPE.
SHAPE. Okay.
CIA is kind of bogus. I mean,
That's
it's
just
there.
a trade name for the media
Oh, it's to
use.
confuse us. It's just to get us off the track. It's all being done by Army people who are now joint, because the word joint comes from the group that brought over a lot, and a lot of good people came over, but they came over illegally to kind of escape Nazi Germany and stuff. I don't know that much about it, but I do know that the funding organization, one of the funding organizations, was out of New York, and it was called the Joint. And Meyer Lansky, see, our mob, the organized crime, the Jewish Kabbalist group, who don't believe in God really, well, they do. They look at God as a Kabbalah kind of thing, and the opposite of good is bad, and they have to get rid of all the good people and kill them, and then I mean, they really do this. They're killing people who are good on purpose, and they get brownie points with their little cult. But this funding group in New York, they would pay for passports which were illegal, and in fact, my grandfather was involved with that. That's how I know so much about it, because my grandfather was told to keep silent and not to tell anybody, but of course he told my grandmother, and my grandmother told me, and I've told my children. Everybody knows they brought in probably more than 200,000 Nazi soldiers and SS and, wacko scientists and psychologists, and all of them, most of them, had the German disease, because it was their culture.
The German disease?
Yeah, the German disease is what the Pink Triangle boys were. Colonel Ron Ray writes about this. He's a Marine colonel who's a Christian who's writing about the Cherry Marines, the homosexuality and the group sex orgies and so forth, which brought down the German government, because Naples, which is where all of the Navy is doing their playing, I mean, today in Naples, these orgies are going on. It was where Krupp, the weapons manufacturer, used to take the German high command, and they would go into on the Isle of Capri, into the Blue Grotto. And they would have big orchestras, and they'd bring in little boys, little Italian boys, who would be raped. They'd give them trinkets. And of course the mothers gradually found out, and just like me, it was one thing when there was just one of me. Now there are a lot more of us wives who are talking and telling truth. And it took those Italian women went to newspapers in Italy, they wouldn't listen. But when they went to the wives of these guys in Germany, it brought it all out. It brought the German government down, because they were duplicitous in it, But what they were doing was pedophilia. They were raping, bringing in little boys. They involved the Catholic priests, who were bringing in all. Anyway, so, but what happened was this whole group came over to the United States. And they, it's an old culture, but it is the reason there are a lot of things going on with children these days. And it explains why it's all being covered up, because if you've got police officers who are playing these games, and they're going in the woods like to, what is this place where, I mean, even Eisenhower played these games. Even Mike Kemp out in, it's called the Hermitage.
The Hermitage.
In California, where they all they get drunk and they run around nude in the woods and stuff.
Bohemian Grove kind of
That's
thing.
it, Bohemian Grove.
Okay, rather than Hermitage, it's the Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove, that's the name of it. My brain's tired.
That's okay.
And the one in, there was a big one in Washington called Rush River Lodge, where they used to all go, and there are lots of places now. But the problem, as I see it, is that I think they're trying to destroy America and the basic Protestant Christian culture, because where you have a militaristic society, which is where the rules are only for those people, and keep in mind that Meyer Lansky and Luciano, Lucky Luciano, and the other man, they chose to go to Italy. Luciano went to Milan. He wasn't banished to Naples and Milan. The two top mob families went there because of the weapons industry. They're selling weapons. I mean, that's what the military is doing. It's totally controlled by the mob. Look at this. Weinberger was General Douglas MacArthur's. He spied on MacArthur in Korea. Who was MacArthur's nemesis? Albatross. It was none other than little old intelligence. I'm going to tell every move you make. Weinberger. Young, but he did it. He brought down MacArthur. Every move MacArthur was going to make, he broadcast it through the chaplain, or his little intelligence network. And he got brownie points with the group because he brought down the big lion. When you get rid of a big lion like that, you get a big job. You've done good work. And they needed to get rid of MacArthur because he didn't want to keep the wars going. He wanted it over, and it's like General Trefay, who took over after the Vietnam War was over, and he was on C-SPAN in August of '96 with former Ambassador Whitehead and a few of the other the State Department Vietnam people. And General Trefay, he had been holding this in for years. He was on C-SPAN. This man let it all out. He said, I took over at the end of the Vietnam War. I was in control, right? Big general charge. So I say, cut off the shipment of weapons. So I tell the Pentagon, cut off the shipment of weapons. He said, I got a phone call from Henry Kissinger saying the weapons are going to continue at the wartime rate.
Sure.
Now, that's when all this stuff with China started. It started before then, because already the communist agents, the New York, Brooklyn, New Jersey mob, were already training Mao. Mao was trained in Paris. So was, the one in Cambodia. What's his name? I can't think of his name. The one who was Pol Pot.
Yeah.
They were homosexually, bless their little hearts, by priests. They were wonderful little boys sent there, turned, which is the word, when they believe their mothers, and then all of a sudden the world's horrible, and then they have these wonderful friends who are going to make them leaders.
Yeah.
They're turned psychologically, and it's a pattern. And so this is why it's so important to know what they are doing to innocent little boys in the Army and the Marine Corps today. Why? Why are they having them go together in groups and strip nude when they're brand new inductees?
Uh-huh.
Why do they do certain things in public, in front of the group? And
Well, they even do that during the pre-induction physical?
Yes.
I mean,
And they also have the doctor.
that's why I didn't want to go in the Army. I knew there was something.
Yeah. But they also turn around the other way after doing that. The other way, and they're upside down. And they do this anally.
Uh-huh.
Now, why do they do that in public? Why are the urinals all out in public, without separate stalls?
Yeah.
If they're not promoting this. And then why is it that the ones who are this way rise up faster than the ones who don't?
Because there's someone there noticing
Yeah, sure.
those
Sure.
who are
Vulnerable.
vulnerable. I was going to say rising, but that wouldn't be quite
They're
appropriate.
called rising stars.
Rising stars.
Rising, that's the word the State Department uses for those who are controlled. And when I was volunteering with the State Department as a an escort in Virginia. I had this group called, I thought it up myself, VIVA, Virginia International Visitors Association. And I tried so hard to get to be a part of the State Department family. But you know, I'm a Christian, see, I'm a Protestant Christian, and they don't want Christians in there. My goodness. You know, I would have guests, and I would let them know I was a Christian and that I love them, and Virginia's a wonderful place. And
Yeah.
But I couldn't be a part of that.
No.
They sent me people, but I never was a part of it, even though I had lots and lots of dignitaries.
Did you ever have any contact with Madeleine Albright?
No, I lived with Sarah McClendon for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah is a Democrat. See, I was a Republican all these years. I was married for 21 years to a Democratic governor's grandson. It was an arranged marriage, and so I knew a lot of the high-level Democrats who were really sort of conservative. It's hard, you know, in Virginia, they're very conservative. So when I stayed with Sarah McClendon, I had become a Republican, you know.
Huh.
And Sarah told me a lot of the things that were going on in the White House from her insider perspective, which totally challenged my perspective on everything. You know, Ron Brown was murdered, for example.
Sure.
Vince Foster was murdered. Forstall was murdered.
Tell you what, we're gonna break right here.
Okay.
Because we're just about out of tape, I think, on this in here. This would be a good place to pick up, though. Ron Brown, Vince Foster. I think Foster had a Marine Corps background. Is that possible?
I think so. He may have. I bet he did. That would fit right in.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That would fit right in. Because Nussbaum's office was right across the hall.
Okay, we can pop these tapes out, actually.
Okay.
And we're fresh with brand new tapes, the number 2 ones. Let's take a nice little break.
All right.
Let's talk a little bit about your husband would get into these drunken stupors, and
Yeah.
he would start running his mouth and tell you everything he knew.
Yeah.
What did you find was some of the most stunning revelations that came?
Besides the fact that he admitted he couldn't be a Christian and was an existentialist and explaining what existentialism meant to him, which was startling to me. The other parts of some of the things he told me, which really startled me and frightened me, was his attitude towards murder, which he said was not murder, because he said emotions are not involved. His cold, calculating view of the destruction of innocent human beings meaning nothing to him, having absolutely no feelings about ordering others to do that.
Now, did he ever carry out some of these murders himself, do you think?
Oh, of course, yeah. In fact, he told me about Malcolm Kerr's murder.
Malcolm Kerr, who's that?
Malcolm Kerr was a British double agent who worked in California. He was one of these joint, these intelligence operatives who worked for both sides.
Okay.
And he had been in California, but he was doing intelligence work in Beirut, undercover. He was the head of the American University of Beirut, AUB, which is in Lebanon.
Okay.
Now, my husband was the liaison between the White House and President Jamal, the brother of the first president who was murdered. my husband was involved with assassinations and operations.
Okay.
He was very upset with Malcolm Kerr because Malcolm Kerr refused, although they were already there, the Marine snipers, the assassins, who were under my husband and General Joy, and Al Gray, of course, were hiding in the dormitory at this university. And of course, General Gray, General Krulak, General Wilhelm, now Charlie Wilhelm was there. He is now my husband's special boss. And they were undercover there, and they had Malcolm Kerr murdered. Simply because Malcolm Kerr would not allow the Marines to stay in the dormitory. Had I been Malcolm Kerr, I wouldn't have wanted rowdy Marine assassins living in a dormitory with children, essentially, adolescent young children, having set, you know, with their perversion and some of their behaviors. So he was put away for that very reason, George told me. Then there was
Did he
Dale
give you
Dorman.
any details about how he was killed?
No, he told me that he had to be gotten rid of because of that. He then said that, and oh, this is interesting, Mary Clark Yost Halab my husband is handled by her. She is an American double agent who was put on my husband's case because she could handle him. They had an affair, of course, while my husband was first married. I found out about it because she called the house after we were married and wanted to talk to him. And I found in his papers a photograph of her and her bio and all kinds of information on her and her address in his address book. And I want you all to see that in this movie. I have a photograph of her. They had a long-term affair the whole time he was in Beirut, while she was married to an Arab intelligence double agent who was underneath Malcolm Kerr.
Okay.
And who took over when Malcolm Kerr was murdered by them. So what you have here is a favor essentially done to Yost. She was Yost. She's from Louisiana. Baton Rouge, New Orleans.
How did she enter the intelligence picture? Was she recruited from school?
She was at, trying to think. I have her bio.
Okay.
English major, written books on British literature, Phi Beta Kappa. She went to the American University in Beirut. She married an administrator there who became, because of her position, you know, they love the mixed marriages. He was
Mixed marriage in the sense of?
For the double agents. If an agent marries an agent of
from another country.
Yeah, they love that. The intelligence community love that. The State Department loves that. And I was mentioning earlier that about the State Department, when I was living with Sarah McClendon, helping her in 1986, I went everywhere she went because she's the senior national White House correspondent. And I went to the State Department one day because I was curious about why there isn't peace in the Middle East. And I wanted to go to what I thought was the Middle East Department. Well, there was a group of students, and I got a press pass ostensibly to go in and interview them. So I left them and meandered up to the Near East section. And I had quite a few hours. I thought they were going to, you know, say, what are you doing here? Because all the doors were open. They had these little buttons on each door, you know, that they could have closed and you could have had to have known somebody to get in, which I think is terrible. To have the American people not know and not be allowed into the State Department without a special Sarah McClendon. If I hadn't had been living with the senior White House correspondent, I, as a citizen, would not be welcome at the State Department. Now, if they're interested in peace and they're interested in that kind of thing, they're certainly not showing it by the closed door policy. So I went in. There were about, 8 or 10 offices. I went in every single one. I was looking to find out who the leaders were. I knew about Aaron David Miller. I knew about David Satterfield, who really wasn't David Satterfield. His family were Zionists who changed their name, to David Satterfield, who was a Virginian senator back in the 30s, who had a wonderful name. It's like Jonathan Pollard. He took the name Pollard, which wasn't his name, because of Governor Pollard. I was married to Governor Pollard's grandson for 21 years. They take the names of honorable people, and then they're not honorable.
And what was his name previous to Senator?
He lived, now Aaron David Miller, I think that is possibly his name. It might have been Mueller. And I'm not saying that just because they changed the name, they're bad.
Right.
But what I am saying, that there is this idea that go ahead and change it and be somebody else, kind of a snake, you know, changing colors for the moment, not being honorable and truthful. Saying my family is Rosinski. Heck, I'd be Rosinski. You know, I'm the 8th Catherine in a row from Scotland. It's ridiculous. But my daughter's Catherine and my granddaughter's Catherine. We're just, you know, it's a family tradition. It's weird, but we're happy with that. David Satterfield, the reason I went there was because in the spring I went to a dinner. It was either a dinner or a luncheon that the World Affairs Council had in Norfolk. And he was speaking. And I'm very interested in peace, because as a Christian, I want it. I know it's possible if people are reasonable. And this talk that David Satterfield gave, there were probably 20 mentions of Israel to one of the Palestinians. He was extremely biased, arrogant. The arrogance is what bothers me, because you can't have peace, you can't have justice where there's imbalance. And even that comes from the Greek Furies, you know, the female who holds the justice. Women understand balance and justice. And women know, mothers know, if you show favoritism towards one child, the other child's not going to be normal the rest of its life. So a wise mother is fair and tries to be balanced, as most families do that are balanced. Well, after having heard the bias and so forth, and then seen other people who were involved at the State Department in Norway when I was there, when my husband was doing some weapons deals with Newt Eigum and some of the State Department people under the table, when we were supposedly going to Moss for the mayor, and her husband and George were doing some deals. He's sort of a pilot, and you know, there's a lot going on between Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Norway, and weapons deals and so forth now because of what they set up in the spring of '95. So I went into the State Department Near East section and found there was not one single Palestinian, not one single Muslim, religious, Saudi, you know, Jordanian, not one Christian Protestant, not one Roman Catholic. Not one plain old American, whatever, from Cornpone. Every single person in all of those offices were either Zionist, Israelis, whatever, and they had pictures all over the wall of Israel, Israel, Israel. They had magazines, Israel Today. You know, I was given a copy of one. And there were yarmulkes, you know, and the Israeli writing. In other words, and I asked one of the women after having gone through about, you know, 4 or 5 of these offices, I said, because I was pretending like I really, you know, I was just kind of wanting to know where the Palestinian office was, you know. She said, well, we handle all of that. We handle all of that.
And this is the State Department, the
Near East, the part that handles Israel, Jordan, all of these.
Egypt.
Yeah, the Near East section. Yeah.
It was just totally dominated by Israeli.
Totally. And at that time, the spokesman, I can't remember his name, he was a Zionist, the spokesman for the whole State Department. Of course, we know that, and I'm not saying that Madeleine Albright is doing a bad job, because I feel as though, being a woman, that she is definitely a lot more balanced than Weinberger when he was there, Eagleberger, Schultz, or any of them. Because I feel as if she's trying to do it, but she's not strong enough. There needs to be a fairness in the State Department, because all the weapons sales under the table are going through the State Department. That's why Ron Brown was murdered. Ron Brown tried for the first time to take away the unfair State Department monopoly on illegal weapons and drug deals. Because the weapons, the drug money is paying for the weapons. The brand new weapons are sold by agents of Israel or this.
No, is this a conclusion you've drawn based on your knowledge of this?
Yeah. Gorbachev, whatever the guy's name is.
Bonifar.
Gorbanifar. And it was either him or my husband worked with him. My husband was the one who was chief of staff under Al Gray when North was moved from the Atlantic Command to the National Security Council.
Ollie North.
And when you work in the White House, you work under the Army. The Marines have no overlord as such. They are, they can float, they can be truck drivers and still be 4th Marine, but they're run out of New Orleans, just like Oswald was. See, Oswald was homosexually recruited by Clay Shaw, David Ferry, that whole, you know, the New Orleans, Meyer Lansky's guy, Jack Rubenstein, who was Jack Ruby. See, all of the funding for these operations go through the joint, the mob. And Oswald's mother had moved to New York, and he had gotten under this Zionist psychiatrist. I can't remember his name. But he came down to check on him. He was brilliant, but he wasn't motivated. He wasn't told he was special. His dad died or whatever, you know. And his father was a, you know, I believe, a German soldier. But the point is, Oswald was a loner, brilliant, and a perfect candidate. He and my husband's profile are just, in fact, they almost look alike. And
you mean their profile in terms of their background?
Psychological
not
profile.
Their physical profiles.
Yeah, even they look a lot alike. Yeah. And what's interesting is
they always allege that he had a double.
Well, you see, this
husband.
is interesting. My husband, when I saw him in June, after his having lived with me that fall, he was different, a different facial everything than the man I married. The man I married and the man I saw in June were one and the same. Had a fuller face. The mouth, you know, the mouth was fine, but the man that I was with, and I know that I felt it was not the same person. Now, I don't think he could have gained that much weight in just a few months, because he was very thin, and you know it. Now I could be just, but women sense things. I don't know how to explain it. And I talked to a good friend of Marina Oswald's who knows that her husband was a patsy. And I talked to another woman in El Paso who was in the book The Widows, whose husband was a German, or rather a Czechoslovakian, whose father and two brothers had come over here as mercenaries, like all of these young men are still doing today. And the father sent for the little boy and his sister, leaving the mother back in Czechoslovakia. Evidently she had had an affair or something, but she was banished. I think they do this on purpose, though, because I'm finding that the boys identify with their mothers. They don't bond so much with the fathers. And they are their mother's keeper in that country. Now, I've talked to an Indian who had this situation, a little boy from Haiti, and a young boy from Romania. Each and every scenario was the same. The mothers were back there. They were given 5 years to become an American citizen, as they were mercenaries. They had to do things that made one of them cry on the bus. And he told me what was done when they did a hit. There was one man who did things that were just horrible, and he said, I want to get out, but I can't. And this is horrible, to put young men who are strict Roman Catholics, you know, they've got that background, and bring them over here and make assassins of them, or, in other words, to turn them in a 5-year period, and for the taxpayers to pay for this. These young men are training with SEALs. They may have a mother who's an American and a father who's French, so they can go both ways. And therefore, they're not under the laws of the United States, so they can go do the actual murders or whatever. And in Oswald's case, if you remember, he didn't have any problem getting into the Soviet Union.
Right.
And he went into the State Department on a Saturday. The man who saw him was a Zionist. He didn't even meet anybody else. Special, elite. Then he went to this town where there were a lot of, you know, sort of an Zionist intelligence elite group. The Georgian Russians had, because most of the intelligence people for a long time were Zionist in the Soviet Union and in Germany, and I don't know, but I know that they recruited a lot of boys at Eton and places like that, homosexually in England, and then a lot of them went to the Soviet Union after the doctors' plot or something that I think Stalin thought that the Jewish doctors were after him or something. So in 1952, a lot of them had to go away, and they had some sort of a change or whatever. But what's interesting is that a lot of this played into tied into my husband, because he was in the place, the Mecca for the Jewish intelligence, or the Zionist intelligence people in Princeton. All of the movie actors, you know, the movie moguls or whatever, they started out in Princeton. The psychological operations crowd from the Nazi, the whatever, they came to Princeton. And, you know, of course, some of them went to Harvard. And they spread out from there. Oppenheimer and, I mean, you know, it's very interesting. That's where a lot of them were, in Princeton. And he was there, of course, well, I mean, he was born in 37. He born in Atlantic City, then they moved to Lawrenceville. But his grandparents lived outside of Princeton. So he had a tie with his grandparents. But then his grandparents wound up moving out to California, so he was really abandoned from the time he was 13. And, of course, being under the influence of Charles Caddock, who was the bodyguard for the Saudis, a la teacher. And he controlled the power in the school. The Cheeseborough, Headmaster Cheeseborough, of course, gave Charles Caddock carte blanche. Why? Because the Saudis bought a big mansion called Russell House. Caddock was there with the Saudis all alone, and my husband was there part of the time. They would go on outings using Saudi money. I mean, my husband was taught to fly a plane. He was taught to shoot. They went on these, they would get nude and run in the woods kind of thing. Even at Princeton, his roommates told me that he would go out with these men. And when his first roommate said, because he really likes George, and George is a really handsome, I think, a little older now, but in those days he was very handsome. And his roommate of the first 2 years, and who'd been at the Hun, said that he had a relationship with a French teacher who was a count or whatever from Paris, who was kind of a teacher's aide, who helped him write his paper, and who knew Camus. In other words, there was a group, this young French teacher, who liked my husband a lot and helped him with his thesis, was also a friend of an older French teacher who was a very good friend of Camus. And Camus was coming over to see him when he was married.
Camus is?
Albert Camus is an existentialist writer who believed in murder and, you know, sabotage. And
The end that justifies any means.
yeah, and he was also an Arabist. They were, you see, Lawrence of Arabia, this group stuff was started by this small group of Kabbalists who were trying to take over the oil. So what they would do would be to find these sheiks and find whichever one would go along with whatever. Well, the Brits were more interested in finding somebody who was fair, you know, not necessarily like that, you know, but then there was a guy named Moose who was in the American State Department who tried to, they wound up, the Americans wound up poisoning this Caddock, got in with the Saudi royal family, the other brother, who wound up getting it. They had a house in Switzerland. The Saudi royals had big mansions on the Aix-les-Rosés is the place where Charles Caddock died, I understand. And my husband, according to the roommates, one in particular, who said George never lost track. He always kept up with Charles Caddock. Well, Charles Caddock only died in, 1995, 1994. I only heard of him as a teacher in the first 3 years of marriage. But when was he writing Charles Caddock? He was writing him, you know, Charles Caddock and Robinson Robinson. I can't think of his name now.
You probably will tomorrow.
Alexander Robinson.
Alexander Robinson.
Was a Marine, very handsome, young, went to the Hun school, and was in Saudi Arabia, in these places, came fresh from there to the Hun school. Went to Columbia University as a history major, which is an intelligence school. Columbia is a school where, you know, for example, Nussbaum went, who was across the hall from Vince Foster. I believe Ezra Pound went there, but in other words, Ezra Pound knew too much, so they just put him in St. Elizabeth's Hospital.
Right.
And it was a wonderful Virginian who got him out.
You know, in the movie JFK, there's
Yeah.
a scene where it shows this homosexual. You've seen the movie JFK?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Well, I presume
Yeah.
too much, but there was a scene involving Ferry and who's the other guy in New Orleans? That,
David Ferry and Clay Shaw.
Clay Shaw.
Clay Shaw was OSS. He was also in intelligence, and he was homosexual.
Yeah, and
They did dress up.
they were in that movie, yeah, in complete drag and a real weird
course.
thing, and I'm sure that struck a lot of people as it's very odd that these people would be homosexual like that, but that actually the movie very
I'll have to see that.
evidently very frankly brought that across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me is this book, The Widows, has 4 spies, double agents, who work for the United States, and Soviet satellites or whatever who were murdered. And they worked for the sort of the Navy and the Army, and one of them was a man who was murdered outside of the Army's intelligence headquarters outside of Washington, and in a Holiday Inn, I think it was. And just before he was murdered, he called his wife back in El Paso and said, "The Army is going to kill me. They're going to kill me." Well, he was murdered, and the Army did kill him.
Now, this is a fictional account, or this
No,
really happened?
it actually happened.
Oh, I was thinking the book The Widows is not fiction then.
Oh no, it's all. Golitsyn, the spy Golitsyn was in there. There were a couple of others. Paisley, who was murdered almost like this other man. Paisley was murdered like William Colby. Paisley was also hanging around with homosexuals. He went to the Rush River Lodge. That is the one. So did Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward, you know.
The reporter?
Yeah. Henry Kissinger was a well-known, totally a homosexual, not even both ways.
And so his wife is a marriage of...
Oh, it's just a convenience. Yeah, and
convenience.
he might, you know, maybe he's discovered women in his late age, I don't know. But, no, I heard through a very well-grounded German that Henry's best friend's father told Henry to stay away from him, and that's why Henry left. The family were embarrassed, and Henry went to Britain where they did this, and then changed his name from Heinz to Henry. And I interviewed a man named Bob, who's an Army enlisted person who told me about Henry in Cambodia. So he, up through Cambodia, he was actually raping young men. And of course, that experience destroyed the lives of these 5 young men, according to the source. I mean, he said he was crying, and this man was a perfectly wonderful, functioning, young married man who worked for a newspaper on the Eastern Shore and had 3 young children, went to Vietnam as an enlisted man, was put in Cambodia, which he said he was it was a lie living there, and then ran into Henry Kissinger, or Henry Kissinger ran into him and did certain things to him, invited him into his tent with some other men. It was horrible, but it was, you know, he said it's wartime and so forth. But he said, you know, I could have taken it mentally if it had been a bunkmate or something. But he said, when it's someone like Henry Kissinger who does it to you, you're ruined. He said, I could never, he said he came back home. Oh, and this is interesting, and I really believe that Bob's right. He said, Kissinger said to him, if you ever tell anybody, if you ever mention a soul, it's the end of you. Don't you ever tell anybody. Well, when he got back, when Bob got back, he went to a special hospital, and they were going to keep him locked up forever.
Bob.
A lot of the other boys just, you know, my feeling is that he was flagged the way I was flagged when General Gray and, you know, Wilhelm had me flagged because I broke up the go-go dancing in the officers' club. I was labeled a troublemaker because I thought it was wrong for married men to be going out with topless go-go dancers in the officers' club dining room, and I took pictures of it, and my husband, you know, got really mad and so forth.
And these pictures today are still with you, or they're missing?
Oh, no. My husband, what happened, I had the pictures. I risked my life because he tried to grab the camera from me. I hid it in the women's bathroom, and he tried to get it from me. We had a terrible fight that night. He wanted the pictures, and I mean, I prevailed. I developed the pictures, wrote a very nice Southern letter, wrote the letter to the club manager saying I didn't think it was proper, had 3 sets, actually 4 sets of the 3 photographs I took made, and I sent a copy of the letter and the photographs to the base commander's wife and to the commandant's wife, and it stopped. But I was flagged, so I know, but this was before Tailhook, and yet instead of being congratulated for helping family values, for standing up for the wives, for showing the Marine Corps the proper place to have nudity and debauchery is not in the dining room of Camp Lejeune. And my husband said, well, this is nothing compared to Okinawa. You just have to get used to it, he told me. Now, I was a colonel's wife. These were young majors, and they were seeing me being talked down to. What do you think it did to them? It demoralized them. The Marine Corps was demoralized. The wives were demoralized, and I did what was right, what Jesus Christ would have done. How can they call themselves Christians and condone, how can Al Gray and Wilhelm and Cook and my husband condone this kind of behavior and flag me as a weirdo? So there's something, and that's where I'm standing. I'm standing on what I know Jesus Christ would have done. And if they want to, you know, continue to hound me because I'm telling truth, well, that's just the way it is, because I'm not going to lie and develop a different kind of personality just to please them. But anyway, that happened.
Well, it's certainly honorable. Now, so then the book, The Widows, continues with...
Yes. Yes, and I contacted this woman. There was a detective who had to be hired. She knew he'd been murdered. The Army covered everything up. She had an independent investigator. And the interesting thing which happened was that she worked in a toy shop. This isn't in the book. She told me this over the phone.
This is Mrs.
Yeah, it's like Klein.
Oh, at any rate. So,
Yeah. anyway, he's a, I'll think of it in a minute,
Okay.
hopefully. But she worked in a toy shop, and they were scoping her out. And this was just after the, no, it was before he was murdered. It was before he was murdered, because she said she told her husband about this. George Bush and his wife came into her shop and were looking at her.
My.
Now, I don't know what that means, but they don't live in El Paso. Why? And he was doing all of the Russian, Mexican, Trotsky kind of work for
George Bush.
George Bush. No, this guy.
This guy was.
Yeah,
Now this is while
Weapons
George
sales.
was CIA director.
right. I believe he was CIA director then. But the interesting thing to me was that why would he scope the wife? Why would he bring Barbara in? You know, did Barbara know? Was he just using Barbara as a, you know? But she was being observed. And it was shortly before he was murdered. And I know that Parker Host, my husband's friend, has dealings with George Bush. So, I don't know. I know there's a lot to do with oil and Aramco and, you know, Texas and all of that. I know it's very complex, but where I draw the line is murder and assassination and corruption and lies and deception and cruelty to innocent women and children and families just because they're not elite. Just because, now, Mrs. Bush is in the Colonial Dames. So is my mother.
Colonial Dames. What is
Colonial Dames. It's a, Colonial Dames is a very elite group of women, they think they are, who are descendants of George Washington's aides.
it? Really?
And they own George Washington's ancestral home, Solgrave Manor in Great Britain. They run, they have Wilton in Richmond, which is an old house where Lafayette visited. I know there's a connection with Lafayette and the Masons. And I know there's a big Mason contingent in the Warfare Selling Group, because the head admiral in Norway, Igam, no, I think he's, no, not Igam, because he's in charge of the prisons which have the drug lord. He's running the drug lord out of his prison, and he's a friend of George's, Newt Igam. They were talking about this, as though I would know about it, you know. And he has a house or a cottage right outside of Kolsås, Norway, which is where they have their one of their underground bunkers. They have one in Narvik, and they do a lot of the cold weather training NATO does up there. But I know they're doing weapon shipments out of Norway.
Okay, we'll call this a wrap for
I'm tired.
this session. You have done a stellar job.
Well.
You have done a stellar job.
Okay, now we're on the clock. Who have we got here in this picture?
All right. Let me just put this here. This individual here is his name now is Rockland Williams. He's a South African quote unquote general who was with the army of the White Army in South Africa, who was actually a double agent for Mandela's forces. He's an assassin, a murderer, and
Did your husband tell you of any murders that he committed? Any people or any situations?
he stayed there with us. He was a guest of the State Department, and my husband arranged, this is my husband here. This is a gal in our church, Carla, whom I thought would be interested in going along with us that day.
because of the South African connection and Mandela and so forth. She's another battered military wife who lost a child. And anyway, she is a very bright lady, and we
No,
went
this
around.
guy's name again is?
Rockland Williams. He studied in Great Britain after this.
Does he have any
got
other
a
name?
doctorate.
Yeah.
He is very interested in Ireland. I think he's basically sort of part of that IRA kind of underground. But his father, interestingly enough, came over to North Carolina as one of the sort of underground trainees, or during World War II. They had a number of training bases for communists in this country. And his father trained and lived in North Carolina, but was not from America, which is interesting.
All right, now we're on the picture on the right, an individual laying down. That's your husband?
Yeah, my husband was a rageaholic. During Vietnam, he had to kill a number of people, and lots of people, and he was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. And the interesting thing to me is that he cannot control himself when he is drinking, or either at odd times he goes into what's called a berserk state.
Okay, so this is one of his passed out stages?
Yeah, and yet he was chief of staff of the, this picture is of me and Sarah McClendon and General Carl Mundy, who became the Commandant of the Marine Corps after Al Gray, for whom my husband was chief of staff. This was at a party at 8th and I Street at the Marine Corps Commandant's house. It was a garden party for the Secretary of Defense.
He's a good guy or a bad guy?
Oh, bad guy. I mean, he knows what's going on and doing nothing about it, ordering hits and...
And where was this taken again?
It was in Washington, D.C. at the Marine Corps Commandant's garden party in August of 1996. It was a garden party for the Secretary of Defense and the Marine Corps Commandant Krulak.
Who would have taken this picture?
One of the military photographers, but they stole, I had at least 6 pictures of that garden party, and I would, because they were coming in my house and stealing pictures, this is the only one I have of that, but it's a picture of a picture, because they didn't want me to have any proof that I had been there, but I was there.
Okay.
This is a picture of my husband's, supposedly his retirement from the Marine Corps, which you never retire, according to my husband, from the Marine Corps. You're always a mercenary, and you work under the New Orleans 4th Marines, which are under a different kind of law than our country. Napoleonic law is the law of Louisiana. And my husband was always going down to Louisiana. They have a training school for assassins. They kind of hop around from Lake Pontchartrain to here and there.
And,
This is General Al Gray, who was the commandant of the Marine Corps at that time when my husband retired. My husband was his chief of staff. This is my husband, George Raymond Griggs.
Okay, hang on just a second. Let's get a good shot of Gray here. Okay, who's the guy next to Gray?
This is my husband's son. He's not
This
quite
one?
right. Yeah, he's kind of a little bit of a, he's not right.
And the lady?
That's the commandant's wife. He married her very late in life because he needed a 3rd star.
Now, who's the commandant?
Al Gray, and her name is Jan Gray.
Is she a good lady?
She worked
Has
for...
potentials?
She has potential. She worked for him in his... See, even when he was general, he ran an intelligence operation, which was a contract organization, trying to hook politicians and get them. What is the word? In other words,
In compromising situations.
Yes. He has and still has an organization which brings in whores, prostitutes, whatever you want to say, who will compromise politicians so they can be used. Jan worked for him in that organization, which was not part of the military.
She was a hooker.
Well, Paul, I don't know. She chain smokes, she sleeps with the dogs and stuff. But when his mother was ill, when he was at FMF Lant, Fleet Marine Force Atlantic, Jan came to stay with his mother because she was on sedation and she may have talked too much to keep an eye on the mother. And then he married her because he would not have gotten his third star or whatever without having been married, because he is a homosexual. He's a well-known group sex homosexual. And that's my husband, that's me, and that's my son, Garland, who's now married, and I have 2 grandchildren.
All right, let's see.
This is a copy of my husband's diploma from the NATO Defense College at Rome.
Okay, let's.
He was in the 56th course there.
Okay, again, this is the.
NATO Defense College, which is part of the of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Okay.
He also worked for NATO, and I was the head of the on the board of the NATO Wives Club. This is just, the Norfolk branch of NATO. Some secret papers that he had in the house, of course, he shouldn't have had. These were operations that were going on, amphibious operations. These are just some landings in Norway and different brigades and names. This is an original of a memorandum from when he was at NATO. And this is a funny picture. I just heard about Marchenko was going to be at a book signing, and I kind of was curious to know whether he had even known George and so forth, and he did. And that's a picture of me with Richard Marchenko. And his father was, of course, one of these mercenaries who came to work for our country. And if you read any of his books, you know that they do everything they want. There's no right or wrong, and then these guys are churned out. And now this I have in here because this is about the royal family of Saudi Arabia. And my husband this is how my husband's gotten his power, because my husband went to a private boys' school on scholarship. He was hooked the same way Oswald was, homosexually. And the 3 oldest Saudi boys were also hooked homosexually. The first one to come over after the uncle had been murdered, because uncle was a really good guy, and he favored the British. So these saboteurs, these communists who were in...
Now, when you say uncle, you're not making reference like Man from U.N.C.L.E.
No, the uncle of
Okay.
the Saudi royals.
I just wondered if there's any connection between that television series and
But
painting.
Mansour was killed. It was Mansour who was poisoned in Paris. Okay. And my husband went to school with him. And now there's one of them involved with the Marine Corps. He's kind of... All right, this is the recruiter for my husband. I'm sorry it's not a better picture, but it was faxed to me, and they took the originals. This was a copy of an old one. His name was Charles Caddick, and he was a homosexual. Borland was a homosexual.
Okay, I need you to hold it up about 2 inches. There, that's close.
Charles Caddick died in the Saudi, one of the Saudi mansions outside of Marseille, where they used to have the group sex orgies. It's a place called Es Les Rosés.
Okay.
And Okay, I think that's, then we get into the diary.
What's this here?
Oh, yeah, this is
Okay, there's-
one of my husband's friends whom I talked to about some things that were going on. He was on the ship with my husband
Okay,
at Townley.
Did you mention any of these during our interview?
No, I didn't mention him to him, so he's not. Right. Let me see if there's anything here. Yeah. When I was going through, they've taken so many of the originals. I met with Ollie Whipple. Now, Ollie Whipple is another Marine intelligence person who told me about Dale Dorman.
Okay, do we have any pictures?
No.
All we need to reduce on this tape here is pictures.
Okay.
Or documents that are significant to anything we might have discussed.
Englehart. My husband's getting mail
Major
for an Englehart,
Joseph Angel.
and I know that there's connection. There's money's being laundered. This is a presidential citation, copy of one for my husband.
Okay.
Oh, and this number is important because this is not his Social Security number, and you can find out a lot by that number. I think it's either 077 170 or, but that number, you can find out a lot about my husband from that. Oh, here it is, 077 670.
Yes.
Oh.
President. These are certificates of what?
When he rises in rank
Oh, I see.
from one rank to the other.
Major. Captain.
We went from colonel all the way back.
I see.
He was, let's see,
Now, next up after colonel is
general.
general.
He didn't make general because of his wife's mishap.
You're sticker.
That kind of put him back a little bit.
You missed him, huh? Now,
No, I mean his first wife,
oh,
her death, which was not. Here, he was with the U.S. Defense Liaison Group in Indonesia,
okay.
where they were training assassins on Timor. They have a little factory for assassins and terrorists that was started by Mountbatten.
Okay.
Okay. This is NATO headquarters. Oh, these are notes by his Marine Corps friend of his from Princeton, who was in his class and who helped me a little bit to understand what was going on. But this is interesting in his handwriting because it says, Robertson says Kay has spoken of abuses, George spending up to the limit, $33,000 on credit cards. He says an intervention often might be good. Jim Robertson, is disturbed by Kay's stories, and this is JR's number. Well, who is Jim Robertson now but the head of the Justice Department Criminal Division? And this is in his handwriting. They've taken the originals. Mike Kimmel was mentioned to me by Jim Proctor, who has written this. Mike Kimmel is the son of the famous admiral who was the head of Pearl Harbor at the Pearl Harbor bombing. And my theory is that these guys take the sons of generals and then they suck them into their little thing. Jack Herman, in the dark. Jack Herman was my husband's roommate from Brooklyn, whose father was Barbara Streisand's doctor, and who is really literally kind of a basket case since he graduated from Princeton. Siegel is the president of the class.
Right.
John Wilhelm, I think he's related to Charlie Wilhelm, whom my husband's now working for. He's in intelligence.
We have a picture of him in the reading.
Yeah, we do have a picture of John Wilhelm. Murdered or something happens to me. And I'm really scared when I talk about this.
All right. The more you talk about it, and the more people know, the more safe you are.
This guy, his name is V.W. Wooten. He was and his son Wallace, he said it was his son. This is the license number, ZYF 3977, Chrysler LeBaron Maroon. The time, it was 5:30:96, 2 o'clock, from about 2 until 4:30 in the afternoon. They were parked there, and on his clipboard he had personal data. He had a book entitled Religions of the World. He was obviously studying Islamic religions, because that was, what the thing. 2 Army pea green coats, his curriculum vitae, and he had 21 years of service with the Air Force. Among the top, I couldn't read the rest of that. Experience, 1992 to present. Chief of Security, K.I. Sawyer, commander of 350 persons. Provides protection, top secret security, education, master's degree, bachelor's degree, squadron officer, Air Force Staff College, fundamentals of probably total quality, I don't know, awards, Air Training Command, member of the Marquette, he's a fraternal order of police member. But this is interesting, 1991 to 1992, Provost Marshal at Keflavik, Iceland, which is where all of this, the drug smuggling and stuff goes through that airport. Staff supervisor, 500 people, brief U.S. ambassador during the visit of the Pope John. He was guarding.
This guy again is who?
Was guarding my neighborhood.
V.W. Wooten?
Wooten. Yeah. All right, this is just a letter from Jim Proctor to Mike Kimmel, who was the son of the famous admiral, head of Admiral Kimmel, World War II's, the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And it says, it seems George has recently disappeared from home for short periods. Kay's trying to talk to everyone she believes who knew George better than average, both in reference to where he might be and in perhaps a more important sense, what makes him tick. Apparently, his pattern predates their marriage by quite a lot. She's coming to Washington sometime the week of March the 4th through the 9th, but at a minimum, she would like a call from you. Her number in Virginia Beach is that. I saw your picture in the 35th reunion book, sailing off Shady Side, blah, blah, blah. And both of these were Princeton roommates of my husband.
Okay.
This is from the Princeton military ROTC book, which has the names of the men who were commissioned in the Marine Corps at the time my husband was. There's George Raymond Briggs, and there's Jim Proctor, who's handwriting in letter to the other guy.
Okay.
All right? And Tom Lewis, I think, is in there. These are just more notes.
Okay.
This is a medical complaint. When after I was battered and beaten, I tried to get copies of my pictures. They wouldn't let me have them.
From the medical?
Yeah, they wouldn't. These are just some little things about. It's not that important. I was just writing down things I remembered. I don't think this is just about some of his background. Yeah. No, this is not really. These are just some legal things. Oh, yeah. I had so many break-ins in my house, and this was one, and they always had a Marine, 20-year Marine as a police officer, who would interview me and say, oh, well, there's nothing, nothing wrong. You just, you're just imagining things. Well, this particular incident, they were SEALs. They were dressed in black. They were amphibious men. My neighborhood is surrounded by water. Mm-hmm. And not only did they break into my house, in my car, they were interrupted by a neighbor's dog, a Doberman kind of dog, who chased them, and they left my suitcase in Judge Reed's woods. I guess they were intending to get it the next day or something. But the interesting thing is, my neighbor, Mrs. Cummings, saw them, and she had been noticing the white van, which I had also been noticing in the neighborhood. And she reported it to the police, and they did nothing about it. And the very day that we had a robbery, they had tried to break into her house because it looks out over my house during the day, like the day before. And she talked to the same police officer, and he didn't even tell her there'd been a break-in in my house. And they not only did they break into my car, but they broke into my brother's cars. Oh, you know, there are all these houses around, but and they took my brother's, some of my brother's things. This is just about what she described to me 2 weeks before the cars were vandalized. Anyway, okay, this is just describing that. Officer Satterwhite. And I would send things to Jewel McGee. These are just, I had a lot of things going on in my house where they were doing things. Oh yeah, this is from the alumni list of Princeton, and I don't have in other words, the Saudi royals are in the alumni class list, but they're not in this particular one. But if you call the Hun School and you get a list of the alumni, then you'll find the Saudis are there. Now this, the CFR list, this is why I have this. This is the CFR, Council of Foreign Relationship members, and all of these I've heard about or met some of them. My husband's mentioned. There's some that are also skull and bones at the same time. It's the Yale leadership crowd. Howard Baker, George Ball, Steve Bell I know really well. He is a friend of my former husband's family.
Did we mention him in the interview at all? Steve Bell?
No. John Blum we did mention. My son is married to his daughter. John Blum, he's a Brooklyn, Yale-y. His best friend is this Rockefeller guy, not Jay.
His son is married to your daughter?
No, his daughter is married to my son.
His daughter's married to you.
And they met. His father, they're Jewish, part Jewish. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting to me is that, I married the governor's grandson, and my son is John Garland Pollard the fourth. I mean, you're talking old Virginia. Mm-hmm. I was like a brooding mare for them. I mean, I was a bird of Virginia. It was kind of like, you marry this John Garland Pollard. Well, my son went to Woodbury Forest, which is where George Bush's son went and Oliver North's son went. Okay. My son went there for 4 years, and he met Alice Blum, who, they have a place in Maine, and there's a lot I know about John Blum, but I didn't mention that. I mean, there's so much.
Tom Brokaw's name is on
Tom Brokaw, Califano, Jimmy Carter, Chafee, Bill Clinton, Cisneros, Cheney, so forth. Harding Carter is a real close personal friend of my husband's and a Princeton graduate.
Okay, look this up too.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh.
Harding Carter.
Okay.
And so is William Prow.
And who is he?
He's a Princeton classmate of my husband's who was
what does he do?
Carter administration, intelligence. All mostly intelligence. And they're not intelligent. Michael Dukakis, Andrew Biddle Duke, Larry Eagleberger, he and Henry Kissinger were good friends. Einhorn, oh, no, I didn't mention him, so I won't. Okay. Forstall, he's the son of James Forstall, who was murdered.
Okay.
Alan Frost, okay. Firestone, Gelb, David Bergen.
Anybody you might have mentioned in the tapes?
Let's see, I'll go real quick. I may have mentioned David Hoopsbaugh, I think so. No, okay. These are just CFR people. Henry Kissinger.
Heinz, yeah.
Oh, another good friend of my husband's is Cord Meyer, and Bob McFarlane, really good friend of my husband. Pelletreau, real good friend of George's. The Pincus family. Oh, Consuelo Rice, she's a good friend of my husband's. The Rostos, all four of the Rostos. Now, these are bad guys, major bad guys. David Rockefeller is a friend of my son's. He came to my son's wedding.
David Rockefeller?
Mm-hmm. In Connecticut. He was in Connecticut. George Schultz, a really good friend of George's and everybody. He's a big power guy. He knows a lot. He's the one who went to Clinton's and told Clinton not to run, that they were going to get him.
Yeah.
And had a meeting, and Clinton threw something at him and stuff. Called Sarah McClendon. Sarah was full of that story for a number of days. Harry Train lives at the beach, and he's, I know him very well. He's part of the New World Order crowd, former. Strobe Talbot, another good friend of my husband's, really good friend. David Stockman.
Dave Stockman, he's a Michigan boy.
Oh, Caspar Weinberger, Cap Weinberger. That's it.
What about Stockman?
Oh, Casimir Yost, I mentioned him. I'm sure that's Mary Clark Yost's son, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I know it.
Okay.
Do you know Mary Clark? Okay. That's that. This I think is interesting. This is an intelligence and electronic warfare operations book distributed by the Army, and what it shows me is how arrogant they are about subversion and deception. In other words, this is just a regular old field manual, 1983 or whatever, and deception is so important. And deep operations, deep cover. Now they don't have the word.
Open that up again where it says deep cover. Let me take a shot of that. Okay.
The special operations is what my husband was head of, operations. The electronic warfare, an important part of electronic warfare is deception and knowing everything about the person, not just knowing about the target. Now, human beings are called targets. Women now are being targeted by the military, wives like me. So they'll have a team finding out everything about my grandparents, my family, who my friends are, to try and discredit me. And, of course, everybody who is flagged, who is a target, they'll jamming is a deliberate radiation or re-radiation of electromagnetic energy to prevent or downgrade the reception of information by a receiver. The multi-spot jamming is directed against more than one frequency. In other words, they jam I've had my caller ID downloaded. Sarah McClendon called my house and was told she couldn't reach me. It's a military base. MED is conducted. MED is manipulative electronic deception. Simulative electronic deception is SED. MED is conducted by altering the electromagnetic profile of friendly forces. It seeks to counter hostile electronic warfare and SIGINT activities by manipulating friendly electronic magnetic emissions. This is done by magnifying the technical characteristics and profiles which would provide an accurate picture of friendly intentions by deliberately transmitting false information. In other words, they are interested in deception as part of their line of attack.
Okay, cool.
Okay. It just goes on and on and on.
Well, it authenticates it.
the key sister.
Yeah.
Then the single pictures you had.
Oh, yeah.
Snaps.
Oh. Real handsome guy. His dad was a Nazi soldier, okay. Was with the big, elite. Name is Ken Millis. And that's his mother, Flo, from 7 Mile, Ohio. Really nice.
All right.
That's the former Marine Chief of Staff. While my husband's wife is being put in the grave.
Let me zero in here again a little bit here. This is where I gotta back off a little bit. Gotta get tight on that.
These are some original letters that he wrote to his lady friend when he was married to his first wife.
Okay, now once again, these the significance here.
He is a Marine colonel who was always there when George would sort of disappear, but he was chief of staff.
Okay. And the ladies are?
His wife and his mother and my husband and me.
Okay.
Okay.
Whoops.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Okay, the other one shows that you're actually human.
Yeah.
Dog lover.
Yeah. Princeton ashtray.
And who's in the picture above?
That's his first wife's mother and his daughter and his daughter-in-law with the baby that I just prayed that there would be a granddaughter. And this is Melinda, little Melinda, in front of the dollhouse in our yard.
Okay.
Okay? This is his first wife
Can't tell you what.
with a dog.
Let's hold those right about, I don't know. Let me put something up there so we can be on.
How about this?
There we go. Just use the box. There we go. Just lay them on top of that.
All right. I never knew Sue.
That's his first wife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next.
Yep. This is George and his cousin Bob. They're big drinkers in that family. I don't know who the other people are.
Okay.
This is George in one of his rages. This was in the morning too, without alcohol.
Gotta back up in order to get focused. Back to the raging one. The one we did before.
Okay. I mean, I'm scared. You're talking major injuries I've had, broken bones, and I reach out for help, and then I become the target.
So you're taking a picture while this rage is going on?
Yeah, at risk of my life.
Was he where you were taking the photo?
He's in a total, unbelievable state.
Okay, next.
It's called the berserk state. This is just, when he walks around nude, when he gets in these stages.
Okay.
Can't help. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know how to. This is him again. He'd take a lot of the pictures and cameras. He'd break cameras, and because I was trying to get somebody to help me protect my life. Just get some help.
Yeah.
That's all. I wasn't trying to tell on him or, be a bad. I was just trying to get some help. And I was scared. I mean, this is the normal look.
He has the look of someone who's a little deranged.
Yeah.
Just a wee bit.
This is a guy working now for Wilhelm in Florida. I mean, giving secrets away, that's the least of the thing. This is former mother-in-law and me, Cody. Here he is in his bedroom.
Okay, now, his particular state of mind here is what? He looks a little defiant.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, what's he doing? It's fine if he's a nudist, but I mean, I didn't know that. He didn't say, I'm a nudist. You know, it's just, it's like I was married to a stranger. This is the George that I thought I knew.
Okay, I'll tell you what, on that picture there, you know that little rule of thirds I told you about?
Yeah.
Whoever took that picture did not know about it.
Oh, right.
They have you on the bottom third, not the upper third. Where was this taken?
At the Norwegian lady statue.
Okay.
And this had to do, they gave me a Norwegian Viking ship that day. That was the port master of Moss, Norway, George.
Okay.
Happy George. This is another, you know, I think we have that one.
Oh, let's do a Happy George, too.
Yeah, let's do Happy George. This is George on Millis's boat with his little Princeton hat, and they're going out in the boat.
Okay.
And this is, again, the one when he was he wouldn't eat for 2 days, you know.
Passed out, okay.
Yeah. This is him in the yard. He'd do that nude in the yard, you know. It was just so, well.
Bizarre.
Yeah. Now, he had the ménage à trois, ménage à quatre with this couple. This is his wife, Sue, who's with Jim Earl, and this is Nancy Earl and George.
Uh-huh.
And they would do the group sex, you know, the swinging or whatever you call it. And I had lots of people tell me that, and yet he's, you know, very trusted, and they know everything kind of about him. This is another woman he was sleeping with in Beirut, whose husband was the assistant director at the American University of Beirut, who was an Arab. She was an intelligence person. And her son is Kashmir.
Okay.
This is just, you know, some bruises of me. That's not very nice to look at.
There are injuries.
This is George with his booze.
Let's see it. But he looks like a little happier George.
Oh, he's always smiling when he's drinking. Bless his heart. You know, he's always smiling.
Okay.
So I'm trying to... this was a secretary in Indonesia that, and I know this is kind of terrible, but he and Anne Bouchou's husband and George, they would all sleep together. He went to visit her parents in Australia. And he told me about that. Now this is Louis Buell, the famous general, who was the one who was going to get him, you know, he was going to be a general, but Louis died too soon. There's Louis again. Here's Halab's address. You can tell that, you know, he tore it up. But I went and retrieved it. There's Halab and company, Halab. Halab. And these are just some letters to Anne Bouchou, another person. That's basically it, I think. I think we've got all of it.
Okay.
That's it.
Right, then any other photos you... Yeah, when would that have been?
Oh, 93, somewhere around in there. 94. November.
Hang on a second, don't move it.
Okay.